All right. See a couple more people joining, so we'll just wait one moment. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Hello, bonjour, tanse, anin, satsuriakal, sabaidi, mabuhay, hola, daigaho. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I'm so thrilled to see many familiar faces and names here and many new ones as well. My name is Melissa Chung-Mowat, and I'm honored to be running for the NDP nomination in Winnipeg North. And I'm hopeful to be your candidate in the upcoming federal election and to represent our community and the NDP. Before we get started, I'd like to first acknowledge that where I am is on Treaty 1 territory, the original lands of the Anishiative, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the birthplace of the Métis Nation, and where our water is sourced from Shoal Lake 40. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the top and most pressing issues in our community and some of the things we need to see leadership on in our riding. I'm really grateful to be joined by 3 activists whom I admire and who have been doing some really important work in our community. As we know, this past year has been a challenging one. Some of us have shouldered more of the burden than others, and some of us have been more deeply impacted. We know that the effects of COVID-19 have not been shared equally across our community, and tonight we're going to be touching upon some of the issues where we're seeing the deepest inequities. Before I begin, I'd also like to thank ECCOE and Kevin for joining us tonight, providing ASL interpretation and helping us make sure that our meeting is accessible. A couple of housekeeping items. I'm hopeful that there'll be some time for questions at the end. If, however, we do run out of time, please just ensure that you're putting your questions in the chat box, questions and comments. If we have time, we'll get to some of them. If not, we will be providing contact information for our speakers as well as for myself so that we can continue these conversations after the event. It's now my pleasure to introduce Cheryl, who's going to be sharing a song with us tonight. I've offered and handed tobacco earlier this week, and so thank you so much, Cheryl, for being here, and I'm just so honored that you're joining us. Thank you.
The song that I wanted to sing today, and it's been coming to me since I woke up this morning, is the Mother Earth song. And the song originates from Grassy Narrows, Ontario.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for sharing such a beautiful song, and thank you, Miigwech. Okay, so today we're going to be hearing from Rylee Nepinak, Kelly Legaspi, and Rebecca LaRiviere. And we're starting first with a conversation about housing and homelessness. We know that this crisis has been a crisis long before COVID-19, and we all are also really aware that due to the pandemic, there were even fewer resources available for some of the most vulnerable people in our community. So it's my pleasure to have Rylee Nepinak join the conversation tonight. As someone who has been involved with community development, anti-poverty work, and work with truth and reconciliation, I just have to say that I so admire Rylee's leadership in the community. So Rylee is the recipient of the 2021 Manitoba Indigenous Youth Achievement Award on volunteerism. He is a proud North End Winnipegger and a St. John's High School alumni. Last year, Rylee co-founded Anishiative, which is a grassroots nonprofit aimed to reconnect the community through youth empowerment. In response to Winnipeg's minus 45-degree weather in February, Anishiative played a key role in coordinating the community caring camp at the Thunderbird House, which served over 1,400 of Winnipeg's most vulnerable. Hi, Rylee. I don't see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, here, let me.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you for those kind words, and thank you, Cheryl, for that beautiful song.
So, Rylee, we got to meet through the work at the Thunderbird House and through the community caring camp. And I thought maybe we could start with you just sharing a bit about the history of Anishiative and how that got started.
Yeah, no problem. So, last year, my sister and I, we wanted to start something that gave the youth in my community a sense of belonging, something that, helped them develop as community leaders, help them, the community, empower them. And so we did that through a number of ways. One being our community litter patrol, where twice a week we met. We were able to pick up, garbage and recycling. We were able to hand out food, essential supplies, talk to some of our street relatives and build relationships. And, those walks alone give the youth a chance to witness the change they're making hands-on in the community. It gives them a chance to develop, empathy. It gives them a chance to develop a better work ethic, and just show them, the potential of what unity can create. When the snow fell, we got together and we were able to shovel the walkways of our elders, single parents, people with disabilities who, aren't able to, shovel their own walkways. I could barely shovel my own walkway without getting out of breath. And, when you're doing these things, each walk we're picking up to 10, garbage bags, we're feeding up to 50 people in a month. That's 80 bags of waste, and that's 400 mouths fed. So, those numbers really do make an impact when you're doing this month by month, when you're shoveling dozens and dozens of walkways. These youth are witnessing it, hands-on. And I think the biggest thing that Anishiative can give them is that sense of belonging. They're a part of our family, and something great that we do is we don't discriminate. People from, the bulk of our volunteers are Indigenous youth, but we have volunteers from all different backgrounds, and we love that. And we help people from all different backgrounds. We all work together. It's unity. It's, steps towards reconciliation in action. So that's what we organically, evolved to. And I'm proud to say, we still have that vision. I think the reason why we're so successful is because we implement the 7 sacred teachings, in our programs. It's something that when we make decisions, that's what we consider. That's the model that we follow.
Yeah, I am. So, when I So yeah, I think it's so incredible what you're doing. And I've been able to witness some of it, that I was able to come down to the community caring camp at the Thunderbird House over several days during that cold snap. And so some of the things you're saying, I can see how that translates into a coordinated response to an urgent matter. And so when I went to the community caring camp, what I saw was, like you said, there were lots of Indigenous youth there helping out, but there were people from across Winnipeg who had come and saw that there was a need and were willing to lend a hand. And, you know, I saw that not only were people's basic needs being met by, you know, having shelter and warmth and food and clothing, but there was truly that sense of safety and community and belonging. And yeah, it was incredible. And so can you speak a bit about how you were able to do that and what that looked like, pulling that coordinated response together?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, I was reached out to by Anish Corporation, EJ Fontaine and Ava Fontaine. And, you know, they had these teepees and they came to me and they said, what, you know, where could we put these, you know? And, you know, myself and my team, you know, responded to that. And it was on a Monday, they reached out to us and we put the word out on social media. We gathered as much volunteers as we could. And the following Tuesday morning, we showed up at the Thunderbird House doors. And we basically knocked on their doors and said, you know, this is what we're doing here. This is what we want to do. We want to help our people. We want to keep them warm. We want to save lives. And they were generous enough to allow us to do that. And you were a witness to that, Melissa. You know, over 14 days, when you're serving over 100 people a day, you're serving, you know, we ended up serving over 1,400 people. And we were only able to do this successfully because it was a full community effort. And, you know, I have to acknowledge the help that we received. We received help from OPK. We received help from WASAC. We received help from Mitch Bourbonier, Community 204, Feast Cafe. We received help from Leftovers Foundation, Main Street Project, Mama Bear, you know, all these different organizations. And forgive me if I forgot to name a few, because there was just so much. That unity is a testament to what, you know, the full community effort can look like. And at this camp, you know, we were able to achieve so much. We served over 1,400 people. We had, you know, missing women come to our camp, and we reconnected them, you know, to their families, 2 of them. We saw so much growth over those 2 weeks to some of our participants, you know, like by the end of it, they were talking about making change. They thanked us for treating them like people, for looking them in the eyes, for using their names, you know, for providing these services. You know, they were extremely grateful. And I think a big thing that we didn't expect that happened was the amount of families and children that came and shared the space as well over those 2 weeks. You know, you wouldn't have saw that the month before. You wouldn't have saw that before at the Thunderbird House, but it happened. They shared a space. It showed us that they could coexist and share a space with our street relatives, and it was totally fine. In fact, it had this energy that was truly addicting, and you know, it was just you know, an experience that taught us a lot. And you know, we're just so grateful that you know, we had those organizations be there to help us, because it was reaching minus 45 with the wind chill. You know, every Winnipegger knows, you know, that's extremely dangerous and life-threatening weather. And you know, because of, you know, our direct response, because we didn't wait, we did it the very next day. You know, it let the city know. It even let the country know. Like, I've consulted communities in Saskatchewan. I'm consulting a community in Thunder Bay about how to implement their own community care camp. Saskatchewan's currently doing theirs. You know, and the city opened up public libraries to this. it opened eyes, and so it taught us a lot. It taught us a lot, about our most vulnerable people who are unsheltered, and the needs they needs that aren't being met.
And I think, what you're saying, it's so clear to me that so much of what's happening in the community, we have the expertise and the knowledge here in the community to respond in really meaningful ways. And, we have this housing crisis, and it is a crisis where we have people who are dying because they don't have access to shelter. And, I just, knowing that we can respond, we can coordinate, we can create partnerships across the community to respond in really meaningful ways. And, I think it's just really important too that having our leaders, our government leaders, approach these issues from a place of partnership too is so important, because the community here knows what the community needs, and it's about having that response and that care from all levels and from outside of the community as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, you're totally spot on. Yeah, like there's a lot that we can do to educate people, about, the people living, our relatives living, in the streets that, they should know. And, they should know that they're equal. They're completely equal to us. They're no different.
And
We're
our
not
needs
any
are,
better.
yeah, and our needs are so similar to theirs, right? Like when I was there, people, like I mentioned, had their basic needs met, but they were also felt a sense of belonging and had people caring and had a space to connect and laugh and share food. And these are all similar things that we all want. They're all things that we should have the right to have. And so, Rylee, thank you so much for sharing about your work, for responding in such a meaningful way, for allowing me to come and get to know you and the team and all of that. Before we just close this portion, how can people get involved with Initiative? And also, are there any big things coming up for Initiative that you'd like to share with the folks here on the call?
Yeah. If you ever want to get involved, we have accounts on Instagram and Facebook, at Initiative. It's spelled Anishiative. And, reach out to us, and we'll get you involved. We have twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we meet up for our litter patrols. Tuesdays at Ralph Brown Community Center at 5:30, and Thursdays at the Thunderbird House at 5:30. One thing that I'd love to mention that's coming up is our Rising Sun program, where we bring in a youth and we bring in an elder and a mother to facilitate a parenting program where we bring in families, we eat good food, we learn cultural teachings from the elder, we do some arts and crafts, we get a story, and we just build relationships with other families in the community. So I'd love to, that's available to anybody out there, with a child, for free, just like anything that we do. And yeah, there's definitely going to be more opportunities that I won't give a spoiler alert on here, but there'll be more in the future. It's a pleasure to be on here, Melissa.
Thanks so much, Rylee. I so appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work together. Hopefully we'll have some time for questions, because I'm sure people are wanting to ask questions, but we'll see. Thanks, Rylee.
For sure.
Alrighty, so moving along, thanks again, Rylee. Our next guest, as we all know, again, this past year has been incredibly stressful. There's been a huge strain on our healthcare system and people who have been working on the front lines of the pandemic. It's been devastating for many families and workers, and so I'm really just honored to have our next guest here with us, Kelly Legaspi. Kelly is a mother of 4, a nurse, an educator, a black belt martial artist, a sports enthusiast, a performing artist, and a volunteer, and is a resident and community advocate in Winnipeg North. Kelly grew up in the Philippines, where she earned her bachelor and master's degree in nursing. She volunteers in the community with organizations including the Filipino Seniors Group, Folklorama, and Cancer Care Manitoba. Kelly was one of the founding members and former vice president of the Philippine Nurses Association of Manitoba and the former vice president of the Philippine Canadian Center of Manitoba. Kelly works as a case coordinator at Seven Oaks Hospital. Hi, Kelly.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Melissa, for having me as one of your speakers tonight. And to Rylee, maybe we should connect sometime later because I do teach martial arts and my girls are amongst the youth and they can share their skills and talents with the youth in your program. So, and hello to the 1,000 viewers. Do we have 1,000 there? I think we do.
We're not at 1,000, but you know what? We're getting there, Kelly.
Yeah, we will. Thank you for joining us tonight. So I'm hoping that after tonight's town hall meeting, we would all be strongly united in support of Melissa for the Winnipeg North.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I'm so happy you're here. And I love that, you know, hopefully there's a connection there with Anishiative. I think that's awesome. And actually, Rylee and I were talking about how do we bring more physical activity opportunities to the North End and for people in the North End. So I think there could be a really awesome connection there.
We can definitely work on that.
Yes, awesome. So to get us started, and this is a big question, but what would be three, from your perspective, working on the front lines and supporting people through the pandemic, what are the three takeaways that you would like to highlight for folks here?
Oh, there are a lot, but top three. Okay. Well, we are all aware of the changes and budget cuts that the Premier had implemented in the past and is still implementing right now, especially amongst healthcare. And the community of the Winnipeg North, I believe, is one of the hard-hit sectors. With healthcare, we have seen a lot of changes and challenges, such as conversion of emergency rooms to urgent care, closure of ICUs, movement of health programs and services, which they made it too far and inaccessible to the members of our community here at Winnipeg North. And if I remember it correctly, when they were doing all these changes, the government's reason was, to quote them, for a more effective delivery of the healthcare to Manitobans. But then last year, that harsh strategy of the government was really put to the test during the pandemic. They call it amalgamation, centralization, but for me, it is more equivalent to control. So in the last year and during the height of the pandemic, and even now, have we really seen an improvement? Did the ER wait times even improve? I just had a most recent experience, actually, and it's a real life experience. My daughter, who is 18-year-old, was just taken by EMS, and being a new adult, this is her first time to be in a hospital. And of course, because of the restrictions, she's by herself. So she sat in one of the healthcare facility for 5 long hours, crying in pain before she was seen. So having said that, my first takeaway, despite the provincial government's reactive response to the challenges of the pandemic, our regional health authorities continue to be proactive. I believe in that, in ensuring that Manitobans would still get the services and supplies, and these are delivered to the communities, even though it was really hard. It was so hard for them, and it was so hard for us as well. Now, my second takeaway, in relation to what I have mentioned, Manitobans, particularly those below the poverty line, like majority of the members of the community of the Winnipeg North, do need access to support and services. So if we look at the stats and the data, Winnipeg North is one of those that had one of the highest number of COVID cases in Winnipeg. And the factors leading to this, I believe, is the population makeup, like the number of people, maybe education, maybe again, access to healthcare, access to information, and then also the demographics played really a big part, particularly age and setup, like multifamily shared household. We do have a lot of those in Winnipeg North. As a frontliner, I know the importance of having a strong and accessible healthcare system and social services for the community. So we do really need a strong advocate like Melissa for this to happen. She may be our backbone. She can be our backbone. My third takeaway is, as healthcare staff, we have been savagely beaten with all the changes and challenges and then the pandemic. But despite all this, we, your healthcare workers, we tried to be resilient. I see the resilience within our ranks. We have to continue, and we did, tried our best to continue to provide support, treatment, services, and advocate for our seniors, the youth, the families, the sick, and the homeless. And at the same time, caring for our colleagues, our co-members in our ranks in healthcare, because we have to care for each other so we can deliver care for others. So now at this point, with that third takeaway, we at healthcare is longing for someone who would advocate and care for us. So those are the top three.
Thanks, Kelly. You covered a lot. Yeah, I'm just seeing a couple messages in the chat. And so I'd like to just draw on a couple of things that you mentioned. And yeah, we know just how big of the burden healthcare frontline workers have carried, how many of those healthcare and those essential workers are women, and who have been carrying some of the heaviest burden of this. Many are racialized women. And you know, there's just so many intersections here about the frontline workers and the supports and access to, you know, just advocacy on their behalf, but also people receiving healthcare and having adequate access to an essential human right, which is access to healthcare. And so, you know, there's been a lot of talk recently about, and a big part of the NDP's platform is to implement a universal pharmacare program. Canada is the only country that has a universal healthcare program that does not include a universal pharmacare program. And, you know, to include mental health supports and dental and vision and things like that in it as well. I'm just curious about your thoughts on that, on also about ending long-term for-profit care homes, or ending for-profit in long-term care homes, I should say. I know that's another big question. I think we need 3 hours for this session to cover all of this.
Favorite.
Yes. So, you know, also, I'm just curious what your thoughts are as a healthcare worker on some of these big policy areas.
Well, I do believe that every Canadian, particularly Manitobans of every age, deserves to live with dignity and respect and not to be treated as merely numbers with a dollar amount, who would be placed in long-term care institutions and be quantified as income for investors. So it's indeed a big word, so I will just try to sum it all up. Well, for the longest time, we are all aware that Manitoba healthcare has been underfunded and has been taken advantage, is what I feel and what I see. Taken advantage of rich corporations and companies and their shareholders with these for-profit long-term care facilities. And because they are privately owned and operated, I do question, is caring for the elderly really a part of their priority? They do regulate their own standards. And of course, as a business, they would make sure that the numbers would meet their expected return of investment. So who knows if their standards even meet best practice of healthcare provision. Until recently, and we all have seen it, when their mistakes and shortcomings made it to the headlines of the newspapers. And unfortunately, one of the most glaring news was within the Winnipeg North. And we all know that. With this news, we became aware of where our tax dollars, the government subsidy, and then the fees that the family of the elderly are paying to be in their care homes. That's where they are going. So my big question too, to answer a question, how can we ensure that our seniors really and the healthcare workers in those facilities are served better and that they can get the care that they really do deserve? This is only possible if the long-term care facilities are properly regulated and monitored to ensure of the standards. Standards from staffing levels, supplies, food, physical facility, everything meets best practice. I do believe that it is time for this for-profit long-term care facilities be governed by proactive healthcare experts. Leave it to the healthcare experts and not by reactive business empires. This is the perfect time actually to show the rest of Manitoba and Canada that we at Winnipeg North would be able to make this change. And that is the only way that I could see that we would be better in delivering healthcare to our seniors.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Lots to unpack there too. I mean, when we're talking about quality of care and you know, these issues have been, this has been also a crisis for many years, and it's taken a pandemic for it to be really put at the forefront. And so it tragically has become much more you know, aware, you know, amongst the general public. And so yeah, and when we're talking about workers and having proper protections, staffing, taking care of workers, that goes hand in hand too with or the lack of that goes hand in hand too with having for-profit in our long-term care homes. Just the last little question here, I'd like to John, Kelly, from your perspective, working through the pandemic, what has it been like for you to be part of a union and have that as an opportunity to ensure that you're getting the supports and resources that you need as a worker?
You hear me? Something went wrong with my volume. Okay.
Yeah.
So actually, being a part of the working class, I really, truly, deeply appreciate. I could never describe my appreciation in having a very strong union to back us up, to back me up, to back up my co-members up. Unions are established for workers, just like the NDP being a workers' party. Despite the government's move on amalgamating unions, and we have seen that a couple of years ago when they tried to combining and narrowing down the number of unions. The existing unions right now really do continue to be active and still be the strong voices for all of us workers. My real life experience actually is our union fought to ensure that we nurses and healthcare workers are supplied with proper, not expired PPE in our workplaces. Working this past year during the pandemic, it feels like going to a battle every day. And to be able to perform well and survive the battle, we do need our weapons and ammunitions. And we would probably not get it if the union did not fight for that. If they stop barking at getting us the proper ones, we would probably be continuing using expired donated. So another one was actually, if everyone remembers, the federal and the provincial government presented and rolled out and they gave away this so-called risk recognition program. And it's supposed to be for frontline workers and essential workers. So all the provinces across Canada during the pandemic, the healthcare workers were their priorities. And every healthcare worker that I had talked to, my networks, my friends, my colleagues in different provinces, and even in a couple of territories, they said that they were getting a top of pay for every hour work during the pandemic since May 2020. Unfortunately, here in Manitoba, doctors and nurses like me did not qualify with the criteria that the province had made. Actually, I have encountered many would tell me, you guys don't need it because you make so much with your jobs. Oh, that just hurt me to the core. Like it really hurt me to the core. Because for me, it's not about the money. And I was very vocal about that with my social media accounts. It is called risk recognition, and the principle behind it is to recognize the risk. So simple enough, doctors and nurses' risk were not recognized by the government. So our union did a very important part, played an important part. They did not stop till we somewhat get some recognition. So better late than never in December, some staff got a top of pay.
Thanks, Kelly. I think your sound is going a little bit, so you're getting very quiet, but
I don't know why, but yeah, having a workers union is really, really very important.
Yeah.
For our unions to continue with their advocacy for their members, we do need someone who would have the same advocacy.
Thanks, Kelly. And I think it's just a good reminder that thank you, Kelly, so much. And I think it's a good reminder that so many people, other folks too, who are working on the front lines didn't have that same level of advocacy. And so we need to keep the thoughts of all essential workers in mind. And so I think this is a good segue into our last speaker. And so Kelly, thank you again so much for joining us and sharing your expertise and your thoughts with us today. I look forward to continuing to work together. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, so our last speaker is Rebecca LaRiviere. I'm so thrilled to have Rebecca here as well. And there you are. Hi, Rebecca. Hi. So again, as we know through the pandemic, another longstanding issue in our social safety net and also a longstanding issue of our economy has been childcare. And so COVID really brought these issues to the forefront again, similar to housing and healthcare and some of the other key issues that we faced throughout the pandemic. So Rebecca is a Métis early childhood educator from Treaty 1 with a BA in developmental studies. She has worked the majority of her 13-year career in Point Douglas with Indigenous communities across Canada. As a founding member of Childcare Is Essential, Rebecca advocates for equitable access to childcare and fair wages for ECEs, believing that all children and families have the right to access quality care programs that are both adequately funded and affordable for families. Rebecca challenges the status quo of childcare policy and promotes Indigenous-based, culturally relevant early learning and childcare programs that reflect the children and families that attend them. Thanks for being here, Rebecca.
Thank you, Melissa.
So again, there's so much here that we can talk about, and I feel we really did need a 3-hour session to really get into this. Yeah, and so thanks again for being here. And one thing that I'd like to touch upon, and I think your bio kind of draws on it too, is that, you know, having affordable, accessible childcare and proper funding for wages for ECE workers. It's both a social policy and an economic one. And we've talked about this together as well. And so just kind of a broad question, but why has it been so important to organize for universal, accessible, and affordable childcare, especially over the last year?
Well, Childcare is Essential was created in response to COVID-19, but also against attacks on our publicly funded system that we have here in Manitoba from the Palliser government. When COVID hit, childcare shut down with everything else right in March, but we were only closed down for about 4 or 5 weeks. And that's because childcare is absolutely essential to people getting to work. It needs to happen. People need to get to work, and it's really, really important. Something that we determined as a group that we needed to do a little bit differently than some of the other advocacy that exists out there is we needed to educate the public, the broader public, because while childcare has for such a long time been like a woman's issue or fallen on the backs of women to deal with and early childhood educators to advocate for, it is absolutely an issue that everyone needs to think about because children are as everyone's responsibility to take care of. As things progressed over the year, we learned a little bit more about the government's attempts to privatize childcare. So to echo kind of a little bit of what Kelly was saying, what that would look like in our province is warehousing children, putting children in a place with the priority being the dollar and not the person. And when that happens, quality goes down and it can be very scary. With Bill 47 coming out, what would happen is a 2-tier system. So they want to freeze parent fees, which are affordable for some, but they're very high for others. And for the high income population, it's extremely low. So it's already very affordable for many people. Our childcare fees are actually particularly low in our province. So there's that. And then we want to continue education on things such as childcare and how it affects the economy nationally. Bill 47, we want to talk about working conditions for ECEs. So we think that's more and more important to continue talking about. We gained a lot of momentum this summer over some of our actions that we took. And we want to talk about progressive pricing, which is a model that there's models that work all over the country, but progressive pricing is something that particularly has been created for our province that exists that needs to be implemented.
Yes, yeah, lots there, Rebecca. I guess, you know, just drawing on a couple of things that you're saying, Manitoba, you're right, does have one of the more affordable childcare. But like you said, it is still very unaffordable for some of the families that need it the most. You know, in Winnipeg North, we have high child poverty, high child apprehension due to high child poverty. Just wondering what some of your thoughts are, because like you mentioned, childcare has been seen as so much of a woman's issue, but this is an issue for all of us. And it's not just about childcare, but also that early learning component. And so can you speak a bit about how investing in early childhood learning and childcare, what that means for some of our communities who desperately need that?
Yeah. When I was working in Point Douglas, I worked at a center called Manadoogie Minigonan in Lord Selkirk Park. And we had an intervention project called Abecedarian, and that's been a long-term project. It started in the 70s, and they're doing very longitudinal research on the effects of early learning in children long-term. And the things that come out of early learning are things like less involvement with social assistance, less kids getting apprehended, less people in jail, more people involved in post-secondary and having long-term careers after that. So those kids are now 40 years old. In the program that I worked in Point Douglas, we had 17 families who started, and we took away the barrier of cost, and we took away the barrier of already needing to be in school or work in order to get a space, which is what currently occurs in our province. You can't get a space if you're not already working. But we gave parents and families a space anyways. After 5 years, or when we started, there was only 2 families working. After 5 years, almost every family was working or going to school by the end. So it really gives parents an opportunity to work, go to school, finish their programs, whatever they need to do to be able to get that hand up. So it's been a really long time, since before I was even born, that ECEs have been advocating for affordable and accessible childcare. But what's really, really important is to understand that quality childcare streams down through the early childhood educator, because we're magicians. We could teach children with cardboard boxes and tape, but what's really important is that we feel fulfilled in our job, that we're appreciated for the value of our work, and then we come to work ready to go, ready to take care of all the kids that are really the future of our society and our economy.
Yeah. I think, when we think of education in general, we expect it to be publicly funded. And how do we expand that to that early childhood care learning part? And, and like we were mentioning early on, that this is a social policy and an economic one. In our conversation prior to the meeting, we were talking about the training that early childhood educators go through to do what they do, and that they're, and highly trained and one of the poorest, financial outlooks over the lifetime in this career, which is really sad when it's such an essential service for children. Just any final thoughts on just that economic component, and how do we value women's work in the home, but also women's work that we're represented in as well?
What I would just say is that, like, the messages are consistent across every platform. Like, we all say the same things. We all recognize that with the national petition, with Childcare is Essentials petition, that that's one of the most important things, is taking care of the workforce. And when I tell people I've been an early childhood educator for 13 years, they say, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you've done it for so long. And it's because it's not for everyone. It is a skilled trade. It takes a lot of work. And so that's how I think it should be valued, is just like a trade. At our workplace program that we have at Red River College here in Manitoba, it's very much like an apprenticeship, where it's applied skills and theory. And you have to do both of those things for 2 years in order to get your diploma. And then many people continue education like ongoing forever. So it's just really important to recognize it as that.
Yes. Awesome. And I think, again, spreading this conversation so everyone sees themselves in it, right? That this is an issue for all of us. Just some final thoughts, Rebecca, on what is this movement looking like? How is Childcare is Essential here connecting nationally with the movement, and any thoughts on that a national framework for childcare?
Yeah, I think it's important. And I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful that with all of the research that has come out for a long, long time, that at the national level, we can recognize that it's important to, some things that we need to do is to standardize ECE credentials across the province. We need to standardize what it looks like, what parent fees and what that system kind of looks like, so that it's the same throughout. And when it's standardized, the federal government will be able to hold provinces accountable and responsible for what they're doing. But I really think it comes from a standardization. And there's really good models out there. There's a $10 a day plan in BC. There's the Quebec's investment into early childhood learning. And then there's progressive pricing, which is a Manitoba model that looks really, really nice. And I highly recommend us looking into that for our funding model.
Well, make sure, because I think it is really interesting, and you've shared some of those resources with me. So we'll find a way to pass along that information to folks who are here today, because I think having some of that kind of like tangible, how does this roll out, is really important in understanding that bigger issue, and how we can envision this being accessible and universal here for us. So, and
then I would just add that if you like to sign our petition at childcareisessential.ca, to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, that is the way that we are currently disseminating information about what this looks like, until we can hang out with everyone in person. So
yes, so I see Becky put those links in the chat. Thanks, Becky, for doing that. Do you have any upcoming events or anything to help get the word out, or just to stay connected through your channels and keep an eye out for that?
I would recommend staying connected, and I'll get back to you with events real soon. So
yes, thanks so much, Rebecca. Again, I'm just really glad we've connected, and I look forward to, again, staying connected through throughout my campaign, but then also, you know, beyond and whatever that looks like. So, wow, we've covered a lot. And actually, thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you so much, Rylee. Thank you so much, Kelly. We've covered a lot of topics. I'm just taking a quick look through the chats, you know, and seeing some great messages, and people are just feeling really inspired by some of the messages that the folks here have shared. So thanks, everyone. We have a few minutes, and what I'd like to just wrap up with, we have our work cut out for us. So, you know, through the conversation today, talking about the crisis around housing, and not just, you know, housing for folks who are experiencing homelessness, which is a big part of the crisis, but it's also affordable housing for families. You know, we currently have a 2,500 name wait list for social housing for families. In Winnipeg North, we have a huge need around accessing safe, affordable housing that is, you know, well kept and things like that. And so housing's been a crisis long before COVID-19, and the pandemic has exacerbated those needs. Similarly, with healthcare, we know that many of these gaps in healthcare have existed long before the pandemic. And with childcare, it was over 50 years ago that the Royal Commission on the Status of Women called on childcare as an essential service needed to ensure equality and equity for women in Canada. Long overdue. The pandemic has brought a lot of these issues to the forefront, and what I've heard described as a K-shaped recovery. And what that means is that if we're not brave and bold in how we approach these issues, we're headed towards a K-shaped recovery where the gap between the rich and the poor will widen. This is something we can't accept. We can't accept the status quo of now or pre-pandemic times. We need to be bold. We need to be brave in putting, you know, electing people who are going to speak up for community, who are going to advocate for social, economic, environmental justice, who are going to stick up for human rights, and see these services as being, you know, increasing and improving human rights here in Canada. I'm hopeful that this is the start of many, many more conversations to build this movement. We can bring the NDP back to Winnipeg North. We know the NDP should be here, and we know that the NDP can provide the best platform to share this voice that we want better for our future. We want a more equitable future for all of us. So there's ways that you can get involved and you can support this movement. First, I'd like to just direct you to the website, www.melissa4wpgnorth.ca. There you can sign up under supporters. By joining the mailing list, we can keep you in the loop as things progress with the nomination. And hopefully if I'm you know, nominated, then as we get into an election. We could be headed for a spring election, but we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. The second thing you can do is also go to the website. There is a link under membership to sign up to be an NDP member. Becoming a member of the party gives you a say in who you want representing you, and also in the types of policies that we want to put forward. There are a few other things to share. I'm going to let my teammate Joe do a little pitch here, and yeah, thanks, Joe.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Thumbs up if it's working. Wow, it's so awesome to see. I think there's like 60 people or 60 screens on the call, but I think a lot of screens have more than one person. And it's really exciting. This is one part community meeting. It's also one part Melissa's campaign launch. She's taking the bold step into politics for the first time, and she's going straight for the big leagues, all the way to federal office, which is just a huge, exciting step. And I think it's going to bring a lot of promise and energy to our community. You know, if we were in person, we would, I think, have sort of a more of a raw community feel going. So I think what I'd like to do is for us to kind of recreate a bit of that moment here. So if you are comfortable, I'd ask that you unmute your video. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a screenshot of everybody that's on the call today. And we're probably going to put that on social media and on our website. So if you're uncomfortable and don't want to be in the shot, leave your screen black and we'll be sure to remove your name. And so, you know, on the count of 3, let's all smile, thumbs up, high five, whatever you want to do. And Madron is on deck, and it might take a minute because there's at least 3 panels of screens here, but here we go. 1, 2, 3, Mel for Winnipeg North.
Did we need to unspotlight ourselves, or did we get a picture?
Yeah, I was just doing that.
Okay, I think we need to do it again. Or we'll get a nice big picture of Kevin,
Yeah,
which would be
just
great
Kevin right
too.
Also, Madron, let us know when you're good on your end.
Yeah, for sure. I still have Kevin spotlighted though. So wait, let me try.
Oh,
Yeah.
You could also just go to gallery view and it might work because that's what I'm in.
oh yeah, there we go. I'm in gallery view.
Okay, great. 1, 2, 3, Mel for Winnipeg North. Whoop.
Good. Did we get it?
We're good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, Madron. Okay, great. All right, so a fun photo is not the only thing I've been asked to do today. I'm also here to give a stirring call to action for everybody who's on the call today. So, I mean, some of you might know me from my work at the University of Winnipeg. Some of you might know me from my work with Communities Not Cuts and other grassroots organizations in the city. And some of you might know me from working with Leah Gazan in the Winnipeg Centre NDP, but in the context of the NDP in Winnipeg North, I'm probably best known as the son of Judy Wassilishvili, who's on the call today. Hi, Mom. So, you know, it's funny, growing up, I was always asked, you know, are you going to go into politics like your mom? Are you going to run for office like your mom? And as annoying as I always found that question, here we are. So I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But actually, the first election that I can recall from memory was in 1993, when Judy ran in the federal election against Ray Pactican. She always likes to tell the story about how after she lost that election, I was like utterly unconsolable in a fit of tears, crying, I think saying something to the effect of, we didn't put up enough election signs, and I really sort of felt the burden of that loss. But you know, Judy would go on to win in 1997 and then hold that seat until 2010 when she resigned to run for mayor. And she even got a shot at redemption against Ray Pactican and the Liberals when, after they redrew the boundaries in 2004, he thought that he could challenge Judy for the seat that she was in and ended up losing. And you know, I tell that story because I think it's a good reminder about what today is about, right? Today is about reclaiming and rebuilding a truly progressive grassroots movement in our community in Winnipeg North. And it's the same spirit and energy that allowed Judy and the NDP to keep Winnipeg North for almost 14 years that's going to propel us back to that place again, right? And that's this progressive movement that puts people before profit, that puts family before corporations, communities before individuals. You know, and Winnipeg North has always been representative of a strong social justice movement that believes in building safe, healthy, and happy communities for everybody in our community and neighborhood, for ourselves and for our families. And that's why with Melissa and right now we've got this moment, and Melissa said it herself, right? Like now, as we come out of a pandemic, now as we're facing all of these crises, that like we cannot settle for the status quo. And to be frank, there isn't a better poster person for the status quo than Kevin Lamoureux, just to put it blank. It's time that we fight for a voice to make real change in our community, and to build off the legacy of not only Judy, but of Kevin Chief, of Rebecca Blakey, of Levy Abad, and most recently Kyle Mason, whose strong campaign in 2019 really helped put the NDP back on the map and bring us back into relevance here in Winnipeg North. And seeing so many people on the call today, I think just assures me and affirms to all of us that we're ready to do that again, and to return to NDP power in Winnipeg North, because the only way we're going to address housing, homelessness, addiction, environmental destruction, climate change, food security, the childcare crises, education and employment, all of these interrelated issues, is to truly advance a progressive political agenda. And to do that, we have to build a grassroots political movement around a candidate. And since 1993, a lot of things are still the same when it comes to elections. You still need to put up a lot of signs. You still need to call a lot of voters. You still need to knock on a lot of doors. You need ads on benches and bus shacks. You need thousands of printed leaflets. And just like in 1993, you still need money to pay for those things. What's changed, though, is the amount of money you need. You might not know this, but in 1993, the total budget for the NDP campaign was $45,000. That might sound like a lot of money, but in 2019, the federal spending limit per riding per party was over $100,000, so more than double. And it's likely to be even higher than that heading into the next election. Campaigning today has developed to keep pace with changes in media and technology. You still need money for signs and printing and phone lines and office space, but you also need websites, social media marketing, high-tech volunteer databases, and online outreach tools. And we're starting to see a really exciting team of volunteers form around Mel, myself included, and we're ready to run a top-notch campaign. But we need the resources to be able to do that. And so you probably have figured out where I'm going with this. So let's just cut to the chase. We need your money. If you believe in the values of the NDP and the ideas that Mel and the speakers here today have started to talk about, then I'm going to ask you to back up those beliefs with hard-earned cash. And so here's what you need to know about doing that. First, I just want to say that every donation, every contribution amount is extremely important and meaningful. It doesn't matter if you can give $5 a month or $10 or $100 or a little bit now, a little bit later. Whatever you can give will go a long, long way to making the dream and the promise of Mel's campaign a reality. I'll also say that if you can give a monthly donation of $5 or $10, that's better than a one-time donation. That gives us the ability and the security to kind of plan. And you also might not know that you get money back at tax time when you give to a political party. So on your first $300, that's 75% of money that you're getting back at tax time. And then beyond $300, you get 50% tax credited back to you at tax time. The maximum that one person can give in a single year is $1,650. If you gave that much, you'd actually get back $650. So another fun way to think about that is that for the cost of $1,000, you can actually get the government to give $650 to the NDP, which is kind of interesting. But any amount you can give is huge, right? Every election sign you see up during an election costs $8 to $10. A campaign website works out to about $10 a day to keep up and operating. So truly, anything you can give today as we work to change from the status quo to a grassroots political movement that fights for real change on all of the urgent and pressing issues that we're facing, the better off we're all going to be. And so I just want to check in with everybody, like show of hands if you're thinking about giving a donation to Melissa's campaign and to the NDP here in Winnipeg North. Awesome. So that's really great. What I'm going to ask people to do is to be brave and to post in the chat the pledge that you're willing to make today. And our volunteers will track that and follow up with you, whether that's $5 or $10. Every little bit truly helps. You can also donate right on the link that Anna has posted there today. And I see Michelle is giving $30. Thank you so much. And really every bit of financial resources helps, and it's super important because you know what, the Liberals have been stuffing their election piggy bank for years, both here in Winnipeg North and nationally, and we don't have that luxury as the NDP. Like, this is truly an underdog fight. And in 2019, I worked on Leah Gazan's campaign. And it was the same story. And it was because of the contributions of people in the community giving their hard-earned cash to the political campaign that we were able to win back Winnipeg Center. And we can do that here in Winnipeg North, no problem, if we can match the Liberals dollar for dollar. And Mel said this too, we don't know when the election is coming. We hope it's going to be in the fall, but it could be as early as May, and then the race is on. So the more we can put in our campaign chest, the better off we're going to be. And again, if you sign up for our newsletter, then we can continue to give you options for fundraising. There will be other exciting fundraising initiatives. Maybe we're going to sell t-shirts. Maybe we're going to have like outdoor barbecues, COVID depending.
A bike jam.
A Winnipeg North NDP bike jam. We're going to do all sorts of fun and exciting things. And I'm seeing a question in the chat about paying by e-transfer. You cannot send an e-transfer to the campaign. What the best way to do that is to either go online to give directly to the NDP, or you can write a check. You can write a check to the Winnipeg North NDP, and then we'll process that and make sure that you can get your tax receipt. Great. So there is one thing though that's more important than money, and it's something that I'm more passionate about. I'm not one to normally be passionate about giving fundraising pitches, but I'll do it if I'm asked. But what really matters, what's more important than money, is people, is volunteers. You could have all the money in the world for a political campaign, but it's not going anywhere if you don't have volunteers showing up and plugging in and getting involved. And so that's going to be the area of the campaign that I think I'm going to be working on closely as we move forward, is really creating a volunteer system and structure that allows everybody who wants to access our campaign and to plug into our campaign to the best of their ability, and to contribute whatever gifts and time and energy they can. That's everything from folding leaflets and stuffing envelopes, to knocking on doors, to getting on the phones, to helping with food, to helping drive people to the polls. There's so many jobs that make a campaign run and make a campaign tick, and it's our job as campaign organizers to make sure that you can access that campaign and contribute however you want. And so I see Madron has posted the sign up for our volunteer page. we'd love to have you, and we'll follow up with how you can plug in. If you've never volunteered on a political campaign before, that's fine. We're going to help you and support you and make sure that you're ready to go. And for those of you that maybe want to take a little bit more of an initiative or get even more involved, the EDA, which is the Electoral District Association, so that's the group, the body that meets to sort of move the campaign along, and that will be planning the nomination, and that will be managing all the fundraising and taking care of all those logistics, is in need of some new members. It's in need of some people from the community who can show up and give a few hours a week and come to monthly meetings and really help kind of provide oversight and structure and support as we head into the campaign. So if that interests you, please reach out to us and we can put you in touch with the EDA. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Mel and just say thank you for listening to me ramble, and thank you all for being here today. And I can't wait to hit the campaign trail with you and to replace the status quo with Melissa. Great.
Thanks, Joe. Wow, thank you everyone so much for being here. This is an amazing turnout. I'm just so happy to see all of your faces and names here today. I just a couple of last thank yous. Thank you to Cheryl, who opened up the meeting with a drum and started us off in a really good way. Thank you, Rylee and Kelly and Rebecca, for sharing your insights and for all the hard work and heavy lifting that you're doing in our community. It's just such a demonstration of what is possible here in the community when we have amazing leaders here helping lead the way and making a better future for all of us. Thank you to my team for making this meeting possible. Thank you to Kevin, the ASL interpreter. I'm so glad that we have you for these extra 15 minutes. And you know what? Thank you everyone here. I'm so looking forward to connecting with you, hopefully in person one day. This is the start of a movement and you're my early supporters. And I thank you so much for being here, because this is where it starts. And it's going to grow from here. We can create something really amazing. We can show that we have our voice, that it matters, that we can create change. We can do this together. And you know what? Let's bring the NDP back to Winnipeg North. It's long overdue. Many people are wanting this to happen, and we can start here. And so thank you. And I'm so looking forward to keeping you in the loop. Things are going to start moving quickly. And just thanks so much. Thank you, everyone.